3 weeks ago you wrote something and then you deleted it before it reached the send button. Not because it was wrong, because you already knew what would happen if you sent it, and knowing that felt safer than finding out for real. You told yourself it was peace. You told yourself you were being careful, mature, kind even. But you kept opening that thread anyway, at odd hours, just to look at the last message and feel that small ache again. That is not peace. That is a question you already answered, sitting there asking itself over and over, waiting for you to admit you heard it the first time. Tomorrow, something in the sky finishes what that ache already started, and 4 signs are about to hear their names, because what happens to them this week explains exactly why avoidance felt so much like relief, and what it actually costs to keep calling it that. In the traditional reading of Venus meeting Algorab, the contact tends to strip the softening layer off things we've been calling fine, and what you see underneath is what was already there, just no longer dressed up for comfort. You might notice tomorrow that a conversation you've been avoiding surfaces on its own, not because the stars force it, but because Venus conjunct Algorab strips the disguise. The 4 signs carrying this the hardest are Libra, Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn. If you have felt something loosen this week, or tighten in a way you couldn't name, one of these is probably yours. Here is the calculated fact behind it. Venus reaches an exact contact with the fixed star Algorab at 13 degrees 26 Libra on August 20 at 16:28 UTC. That contact opens a window that starts August 19 and closes August 21. 2 days, not more, not less. This is a measured position, the kind astrologers track the way sailors once tracked stars to know where the coast was. Algorab has long been associated with severed ties, with things coming apart at the seam, and with the uncomfortable clarity that follows. Venus is the planet of affection, of value, of what we choose to keep close. The classical reading of this contact is a mirror moment. Whatever you have been softening with kindness gets to show its actual shape. This is not a punishment transit. Nothing is fated to break just because Venus and Algorab meet at that degree tomorrow. The reading that follows uses whole sign houses, counted from each sun sign as if it were rising. It is a symbolic lens, not a claim about your actual birth chart. So when you hear a house named for your sign, hear it as a traditional angle on a life area, not a diagnosis of you personally. For Libra, this activates the first house, identity, presence, the body you're standing in. For Aries, the 7th house, partnership, contracts, the agreements you've made with another person. For Cancer, the 4th house, home, family, the room you actually live in. For Capricorn, the 10th house, career, reputation, the name people say about you when you're not there. 4 different rooms, one same pressure, arriving tomorrow. What this placement usually describes is a moment when the polite version of a situation and the real version can no longer occupy the same sentence, and one of them has to be named out loud. You may notice that the relationships where you've been most careful are the ones that feel most fragile this week, and that fragility might be the signal rather than the problem. The window is short, but the clarity it offers is the kind that usually takes months to arrive on its own. Tomorrow is not the only day this matters, but it is the day the sky makes it easier to see what's already been true for weeks. Libra, this is the house of your own identity, the first house, the one about presence and how you show up before you say a word. Here is the risk. You have spent weeks being agreeable, softening your preferences into whatever works, because disagreement felt like too much to carry this month. Astrologically, this can symbolize a Venus placement asked to perform peace instead of feel it, and Algorab's contact tends to expose exactly that gap between the performance and the actual want underneath. You might notice your voice catches on the first attempt at honesty, and that catch is worth listening to rather than swallowing. You may find yourself rehearsing the sentence in your head a dozen times before you say it out loud, smoothing it each time until it no longer sounds like what you actually mean. Here is the opportunity hiding inside that risk. Tomorrow gives you an unusually honest window to say the plain sentence you've been dressing up in softer language for someone else's comfort, not a confrontation. Just the truth, said once, without the cushion around it. The concrete action inside this window. Pick one relationship where you've been performing ease and send one message that states what you actually want, plainly, before August 21, not a paragraph. One clear line. You might feel the urge to add 3 softening clauses after the main point, And that urge is the exact habit this window asks you to interrupt. Here is the limit, and it is a real one. If you keep choosing the smoothed-over version of yourself past this window, the ache doesn't disappear. It just moves further inside. And the next opportunity to say the true thing arrives with more weight attached, not less. The gesture is small. The window closing is not. You could tell yourself, you'll find a better moment next week. And next week, the same calculation will present itself with one more week of resentment underneath it. Aries, the activated house here is the 7th, the house of partnership, contracts, the people you've formally tied yourself to. Notice the symptom first. You've been agreeing to plans, terms, or a shared silence with a partner or collaborator, and telling yourself you're being flexible. You might catch yourself nodding along in a conversation while your jaw stays tight the whole time, agreeing out loud and disagreeing everywhere else in your body. That gap is the tell. Symbolically, this Venus contact tends to point at agreements made too quickly or too generously, in exchange for a calm that never actually arrived. The cause underneath the symptom: somewhere in this partnership you traded your actual terms for the appearance of ease, and Algorab's contact this week has a way of making that trade visible again, right when you thought you'd stopped noticing it. You may notice you avoid certain topics in conversation with this person, steering around them so smoothly you've almost forgotten you're doing it. You might find yourself checking the time during a shared activity, counting the minutes until you can leave without it seeming rude. Read the actual terms of whatever you agreed to: a schedule, a shared cost, an unspoken rule about who does what, and name out loud, to yourself first, whether you'd sign it again today. Then say one sentence to the other person about the one term that still bothers you, before August 21. If you let this pass again, the agreement doesn't collapse. It just quietly recalibrates in their favor a little more, and 6 months from now, you'll be renegotiating from a much weaker position than the one you're standing in tomorrow. You could wait for them to notice the imbalance first, and that wait might outlast the partnership itself. Cancer, your house here is the 4th, home and family, the room where you actually live and who you live it with. Think back to a recent evening at home when something felt slightly off, a conversation that ended too fast, a silence at the table that wasn't comfortable. That memory keeps returning because the pattern under it hasn't been named yet. The useful question this raises is what's been quietly unsettled at home, the domestic peace that's been kept by not asking the harder question. The pattern that repeats. You keep the household calm by absorbing the friction yourself, smoothing it before anyone else even notices it was there. You might find yourself doing the emotional cleanup after every small disagreement in the house this week, almost automatically. You may notice you're the one who apologizes first, even when you weren't the one who started the tension, and that reflex is worth examining rather than obeying this time. The new movement is this: before August 21, let one piece of friction stay visible for a day instead of smoothing it immediately. Say what actually bothered you about that dinner or that arrangement to the person who was there. Not a fight, just visibility. You might feel a pull to soften the statement as soon as you've made it, to add, "but it's fine" at the end, and that pull is the pattern asking to stay intact. You already know what it says, and you already know why you haven't sent it, not because you don't know the answer, but because some part of you decided the answer before you even asked the question, and everything since has just been confirmation. That's what tomorrow's contact between Venus and Algorab makes visible, not a new truth, just the old one finally lit clearly. If you send it, or say it, or open the account before August 21, something in that relationship or that room or that account gets to be current again instead of quietly managed. The gesture is small, the relief is immediate. The cost of waiting is the same small tax you've been paying every week, disguised as peace. If you let the window close instead, nothing falls apart today. It just keeps costing you, and 6 months from now you'll be further into a situation you've already decided isn't working. So, which is it? The sentence you already know by heart, or the silence you've been calling calm? Tell me in the comments which sign found you tonight.